Hello, Dr. Thomas. Dr. Tamara Thomas, that is, correct?
Correct. Hello.
So, we have you here today to ask you a few questions about your childhood. So, what do you recall about your childhood, your early childhood?
My early childhood was wonderful. Well, it started out, my parents, we lived in Dallas with my parents, and when they got divorced, I was about 4 years old, and me and my siblings moved to Plano, to the Douglas community with our grandparents. And so our grandparents pretty much raised us from there. It was a wonderful childhood in that they made sure we had everything. And even though, the funny thing is, even though we were not rich, certainly not rich, we weren't dirt poor, but we definitely weren't close to rich. We thought we were rich because we didn't go without anything. Our grandparents made sure we had tons of food and clothing. As a matter of fact, my grandmother worked at the cleaners, and she would take us shopping every week when she got paid because my grandfather is AJ or Andrew Jackson Stimson and Baby Doll Stimson. My grandfather worked at the in downtown at the Federal Building, so he took care of all the bills. So my grandmother spent her money pretty much taking us and whoever was at our house shopping. If we had cousins, friends, whoever was there went shopping. And I remember I would get from the earrings, matching my outfit, all the way down to shoes. And at that time, we wore jellies. And jellies were shoes that came in all different colors. They were like plastic. So if you had pink jellies, your whole shoe was pink plastic, And so it would match every outfit, every color. And so we had a really good childhood. We also, my great grandfathers were the first two freed slaves to settle in the Douglas community. And so everybody in the community pretty much was family. And if you weren't blood family, as years went on, you certainly were still like family. It was one big giant family, and everyone, if you were out in the street and you did something that was, not right or incorrect or, bad, it may be the neighbor that got onto you, and then by the time you got home, the call had been made, and then you get in trouble when you get home. And so but you always knew you were surrounded by love, and we played in the streets a lot. I remember sitting out in the streets until you had to come in by the time the street lights went off. So I remember us sitting in the streets, in the middle of the street until a car came. Every time a car came, we'd have to get up and get out of the street, then go back in the middle of the street. But we'd sit there and laugh and play hopscotch, talk stories. I would listen to my older sister and my cousins talk about their boyfriends, and here I was, probably 7 or 8, giving them advice. And I mean, that's just how crazy it was, but it was a good childhood.
Well, very good, very good. It sounds like it. So, where did you go to school?
So I went to school at Mendenhall, and from there, that was elementary school.
Mhm.
And from there, I went to Bowman, that was middle school. And then I went to Williams High School for 9th and 10th, and 11th and 12th, I went to Plano East Senior High. That's where I graduated from, Plano East Senior High.
So, were you active in any extracurricular activities in school, or?
I was. One thing about it, I was born as a preemie. I weighed 2 pounds, no ounces. So I came into this world with challenges. My lungs were underdeveloped, so I had asthma. I was born with asthma. So a lot of my, especially elementary school years, I couldn't do a lot of the activities. I could only be outside. Like I said, we were in the streets. If we were sitting grass, I would get sick, so I couldn't sit in the grass, but we sat in the streets. So my elementary years, I didn't have a lot of activity, but by the time I got to middle school, I was able to play basketball. I played soccer, and I played volleyball. And by the time I got to Williams High School, I was in the ROTC, and I was in a lot of like academic type things. And so when I got to Plano East Senior High, I was not so much involved in school things as I was outside of school. I actually started um, college in the 11th grade. As I was going through high school, I was also going to Brookhaven Community College as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so so you played soccer and volleyball and basketball. Okay, gotcha. Very good.
And drama. I was always in some drama. I loved drama club. Um, I write plays and creative to this day. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
And choir. I was in the choir too. Can't sing a tune today, but I was in the choir and I was at choir at church and things like that. So yeah.
Got it. So how was social life in and out of school? Like in school, how were you social? How did that look?
So in school, I was social. I had friends of all ethnicities, and we didn't know anything about discrimination so much then. So we were just friends, you know. And but once we got home, it was a little bit different. I could go to my white or Mexican friend's house for a little bit, but they never came to mine, and we didn't really see anything wrong with that. That's just the way things were. But then when I got home, like I said, we were mostly in the neighborhood, the Douglas community neighborhood. So that was all family and friends, and and we played until we couldn't play anymore. There were no strangers in the community. We were all one big family. So yeah.
Got it. So that kind of pretty much explains what you did and what you and your siblings did in your spare time. Basically, it was a community.
Yeah, it was. In the house, in our spare time, we would play games. Like we would, my older sister would ask us Bible questions and stuff like that. And if we got it wrong, she would, raise us up by I forget what they called it, but it was almost like choking us, and we would say, we're gonna fall asleep, and it was just a game, and all. We cut up a lot, having fun and playing with each other, and telling each other what to do and how to do it and things like that.
Very good, very good. So your family life, do you have any family traditions?
We do have some traditions, and one of the traditions is for every birthday, every holiday, all of those things, we meet together in one place if everyone can, and we celebrate each other, One of the things that's kind of, I don't know if it's really a tradition, is we talk even today all the time, even with our cousins, we will, we text, or somebody's in communication with somebody at all times. And so that's one of the things. Also, the birthday cake, no matter how old you are, how old you get, you're going to have a birthday cake on your birthday, no matter what, and we're going to celebrate you. And so those are just some of the traditions that we have,
Got it, very good. So how did you all celebrate holidays?
So holidays are huge. Like that was like a big family reunion every holiday. My grandfather was a cook on a Navy ship, so he could really, 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 really cook, really good. As a matter of fact, he's the one who taught my grandmother how to cook, And so whatever the holiday was, they started way before time, with getting the food ready, getting the food prepared. Cousins came from out of town, all of the family. My grandparents had 6 kids, I believe. And so all the families came together every holiday at my grandparents' house. Not only that, extended cousins, everybody. So it was like holidays were like a family reunion every holiday, whether that was Christmas, New Year's, Easter, Labor Day, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, all of the holidays, Juneteenth, we shared. And Juneteenth is when the slaves found out in Texas 2 years after they were freed they found out that they were freed in Texas 2 years after. And so that holiday is known as Juneteenth, where we celebrate that time. And so every year we celebrated Juneteenth. It was a big deal. We would go to the what we call the school campus, because it was a black school in the neighborhood before segregation and desegregation, and we would go there and we would have a big, huge, party there where everybody in the whole neighborhood would, be a part of it.
Very good, very good. So is there, speaking of your family, is there anything in your family that has been passed down, like from generation to generation, like heirlooms or anything like that?
Well, my grandparents had a Bible, a huge white Bible. I think every home may have had it, but that was passed down from generation to generation. Also, we have photos, and I'm not really sure who ended up with them now, but we had tons of photos that were passed down that somehow we've got to retrieve those photos. Also, some of the things like our grandparents' rings, wedding rings or wedding bands. My great-grandmother had a rocking chair that my sister still has today. And so, there were fur coats that my mom had that were my grandmother's, so there were different things like that that was passed down. But the best thing was the stories, of how each generation was raised and what happened and things like that.
Got it. So what are those stories about?
So there are stories about anything from my grandmother's uncle, I believe it was playing on the railroad track when a train came by, and that's how he lost his legs and eventually his life. So stories from our history of how people lived during picking cotton, how our great-grandfathers came from other states to be freed slaves. Things like our aunts and uncles, and how they, even my mother, when she went to college, she went and she was, went during the time of desegregation in colleges. So she was one of the first African Americans to be at the University of North Texas, which was North Texas State University at that time. So all kinds of stories about the neighborhood, how they pretty much the same thing that we did with everybody in the neighborhood was family, but for them it's a totally different, hilarious story because they seem to have gotten into way more trouble than we did.
Got it. Very good. So, was your family religious? And I mean, if they were religious, how did that play a role in your life from childhood to now?
Wonderful question. My family was very religious. Church and God was our life. My grandparents raised us, as I said, when my parents got divorced, and so we went to Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, which was right across the field from our house. My grandfather was a deacon. My grandmother was part of the mission board, which is kind of like deaconess, I guess. And so they were always in church, and they raised us in church. We were at church for every time the doors opened. One of my greatest memories was Vacation Bible School. And it's so funny because it seemed like Vacation Bible School had the best cookies. I don't know what type of cookies they were, but we would get so excited when it was time for Vacation Bible School because we knew we were going to have those good cookies. But we would break off into rooms and they would teach us different things about the Bible and Jesus and in our different classes. Then we'd come back together and sing our songs, and it was just wonderful. Church was a part of our life. We were baptized in Shiloh Baptist Church. Baptism is when you dedicate your child's life or yourself, if you're an adult, to the Lord, and the pastor would take you into a baptismal pool and you would get immersed full body into the pool, and that was you making a statement that, I am receiving Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and I'm washing away the old life and taking on a new life in Christ. And so we did that even as kids, But in our home religion, our grandfather, he would tell stories of the Bible as though it was his best friend John, Moses, my boy Moses. And so the stories were so wonderful for us because they were so real and lifelike that we would just sit and listen to them, and get really excited about it. And so it was a part of our life. We grew up reading the Bible, knowing the Bible, having questions, asked to us about the Bible, and we knew right from wrong, whether, we decided to do it later or not, but we definitely knew it. And from that to now, I have been ordained and licensed and consecrated as a minister, and also consecrated as a bishop in the Lord's church. And so I would say that upbringing brought me to where I am today, with a life that's totally sold out to God. And so I'm a product of that religious homebringing.
Oh, very good, very good. So let's shift a little bit. So growing up, how was life different from your early childhood to your young adult life?
So early childhood, like I said, was wonderful, great. It was everything I could want, But when I went to college at University of North Texas, I got a little bit grown, and I wanted to, kind of experience life. And so I wanted to come home for a year because I had a boyfriend at home. I wanted to come home for a year, and my grandparents told me, if you leave school and you leave college, we're going to stop paying your car note. You're going to have to pay all of your bills. So I thought they were joking, because I never known a bill. What is a bill? They meant every word of it. So from being a child that had everything to being an adult now that was having to be responsible for paying bills and learning about life, there was a big, huge difference. Of course, they were always there. They always had my back, as the traditions and all of that. Even as I got my own apartment, I would call my grandmother. We called her Mama Doll because her name was Baby Doll. She actually named herself. I think the first 2 years of her life, they just called her Baby. Well, she had a little baby doll, and so her mom asked her, "What is your name?" And she said, "Baby Doll," and that became her name. So anyway, I just had to tell that story. But from that to being an adult, it looked a little different, because now I was responsible, even though they never, they always had my back. So it was a little bit different having to grow up, because my grandparents were serious about education. They were serious about paying your bills on time. They were serious about making you a responsible citizen. But as you grow up, you kind of sway, from those things, and you learn later, oh, I should have listened,
Gotcha. Very good, very good. So, in all of that, what are the skills that you learned growing up that really impacted your life?
Skills will be some of the things that I named. How important it is to keep good credit, to keep, pay your bills on time, to love God, also to get an education, to set your life on a path, and to be successful at it, and not only that, just to be a good person and a good citizen, and most importantly is to be a giver, to make sure those that are around you have food, clothing, have what they need. Like I said, when we were growing up, whoever was at our house on Friday when my grandmother got paid, everybody went shopping. You didn't have to be a brother or sister. You could be a cousin, you could be a friend, and then if you were at the house, we all got in the car and everybody got clothes, And to this day, I find that me and my siblings do the same thing. We make sure that those that are around us are taken care of. If people have a need, we try to get that need solved, and see what we can do to give people the resources that they need, especially with the Douglas Visions Committee, which is a nonprofit organization that my grandfather and some of his friends and relatives in the neighborhood started. And it has trickled down all the way to my brother being the president of that organization, and me and my siblings, and working with him in that, and then our first cousins and our second cousins, you know, have all joined in, and we're still today making sure that people are getting the resources that they need.
Very good, very good. So, did you have a job as a teen? Where did you work, and what did you do?
I had a job. I get tickled thinking about it because my first job was at GW Junior, which was a hamburger place. So I was a chubby, as today, a chubby kid. Because I had asthma, I couldn't be as active as I wanted to be at a young age. So I was heavy, you know, and I loved to eat. My grandfather cooked a lot. I was a grandfather's baby, you know, so I ate a lot. So GW Junior was my favorite hamburger place. And I went there, and I said, my grandfather would pick me up from school, and food was already ready at home. Dinner was already ready, but he'd pick me up from school, and I'd say, can we stop at GW Junior? And he would say, okay. So we go to GW Junior, I would get my favorite hamburger fries, and he would ride me around, and I would eat it before I got home, because if I got home with it, my grandmother would be so angry, you know. So when I got my first job, I got my first job at GW Junior. I went there, I got the job. They worked me like a slave horse the first day. At the end of the night, I told them I was moving, I had to quit. They had me sweeping floors, mopping floors, cleaning out the tables. Then I had to go in the back. They had me cooking on the stove, cooking hamburgers. I didn't know anything about cooking. Then they had me working the window, the drive-through. Oh no, I was too done. So I worked at GWG one full whole day.
Oh my goodness, get out of here. That is something. So, growing up, were there like any natural disasters or political changes, you know, that you remember? And if you do, how did it affect you?
So I don't really remember any natural disasters until I got older with the 911. I was an adult at that time. But I came up, I was born in 1967, and 68 is when Martin Luther King died. So I was 1 year old when he was killed. So there was always, as I was growing up, there was always this, I don't know if I can call it a shadow or an undertone of the loss of Dr. Martin Luther King. So I didn't get the opportunity to know him in that way because I was only one, but the stories were told, the history was shared. And so that was definitely in our community the most disastrous thing that we experienced was that our leader was murdered.
Got it. So, you mentioned you grew up in the Douglas community in Plano. So, how has the neighborhood changed over the years, or has it changed, or what do you think the differences are today from when you were growing up?
The neighborhood has definitely changed a lot. So, when I was growing up, we had our beauty shop was across the street at Miss Mert's house. There was also Miss Raymetria that was next door to Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. She was a beautician. Also, the funeral home was on the other side of the church, which was the Stimson Funeral Home, our cousins. And then we had behind us was the Blue Room, which was a juke joint at night for all the adults to party. Juke joint was like a club. Mm-hmm. They had tables in there. They would sit around and drink and play dominoes or cards or whatever. They had a big dance floor in the middle. They had the music blaring, the alcohol, whatever. The kids weren't allowed to go in there during that time. During the day, we could go in and we could buy sodas. We called them soda waters. We could buy soda waters and chips and candy and ice creams, and some of the candy we ate was like Now Laters. They had this candy. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a whistle. The whole thing was a whistle, but it was candy. Different things like that, and things were cheap. I think sodas may have been like 25 cents, soda water or something like that. Everything was really cheap, so we would go in and out of that place during the day buying all of our junk. There was also a house on F Avenue, which was like 4 blocks over, that kind of served the same purpose. They had a little area that was, the juke joint, and she also sold hamburgers during the day and things like that. So we would go there. So we had our hamburger and food houses. We had our juke joints. We had our funeral home. We had our beauty shops. We had our schools. Everything was in the neighborhood. Our cemetery was in the neighborhood. Everything was in the neighborhood. All of our churches, the Baptist church, Methodist church, Church of God in Christ. I mean, everything was here, And so today, of course, that has all changed. We still have our churches. We don't have the funeral home anymore. We don't have the beauty shops anymore. The school, when desegregation came, the black school was no longer, my mother graduated from the high school here in the black community. That was no longer, so it became the Boys and Girls Club. And so everything has changed. Now, where it used to be an all African American community, there are different races here now. Habitat for Humanity came in and built other houses, so it's no longer the older houses as much anymore. So everything has changed. I mean, it's good, but it's not our hub anymore. But it's still good in that all people, all races are welcome here, and we still have somewhat of a community.
Got it, very good. So let me ask you this question, because you shared that you're a doctor, and so what is your vision for, I guess, the community, or for Plano as a whole? What do you see? What is your vision with moving forward with the nonprofit that you have, that you serve, or you work with? What is your vision? What do you see? What would you like to see happen?
So now that our community has definitely changed, I would like to see, first of all, the history of our community being told, and others being able to see what this community once was and how it's grown and developed. I would also like to see the community that is here now become that family community again, with all races and nations involved, so that there is still yet a story to tell. For the entire city, I would like to see more of community and diversity inclusion. I would like to see that all of our stories are told openly, no matter what race or nationality you are, but it's told in a way that this is where we were, this is where we come to, and this is how we're down together and working to make this city a better place for everyone, And we don't want to see anybody hungry. We don't want to see anybody that is homeless, no one that does not have resources of clothes, even down to furniture, whatever it is that people need. I would like to see, especially working through Douglas Visions Committee, that we're able to, if we can't meet the resources, we can partner with other agencies in order to do that, but that no one would be lacking. That's what I would like to see, and I would like to see leadership, political leadership in the city that really has the heart of the people, and really take this city to a place that is unified and that celebrates the history, but also moves forward to how we can be much greater together as a people.
Very good, very good. Well, Dr. Tamara Thomas, we'd like to thank you so much for your time today and for your input. And I think that wraps it up for us. Thank you so much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.